So I mentioned Cheryl Strayed. She's the one who wrote the novel Wild. Maybe you saw the movie about the woman who walked over. Anybody see it? Anybody read the book? Highly recommended. So she walked the entire, what was the name of the trail? The West Coast Trail? No, not the Appalachian Trail. It was the one on the West Coast. Anyway, under duress and without proper, actually with way too much gear, without proper shoes, without experience, but made it through. And it was something she was in a very difficult time of her life and just decided she had to do that to save herself. So anyway, very interesting novel. And right now I'm actually listening to her book on tape, read by her, called Tiny Beautiful Things. And there was an advice column called Dear Sugar that was started, and the person who started it needed to let it go and asked her if she would take it on, so she did. So this book, Tiny Beautiful Things, is a collection of her, some letters and the responses. And man, read it. I kept having to stop and take notes. Really, really powerful. She's very, very, very honest, a little raw sometimes in her answers, but man, great instructions for living. Tiny Beautiful Things. So one of the mini quotes I was writing down while I was listening was, "We can all have a better life if we make it so." So, a lot of things happen to us. A lot of things will happen to us. In fact, on the way over here, she was addressing a situation where someone was separating themselves from their father and in anguish over that. And she was saying, that we grow stronger not in spite of our difficulties and challenges, but because of them. And how so often in those things that are the most terrible in our lives, these amazing gifts come. And I certainly am here to attest to that. It's not that we would want those things to happen again to us, despite all the beautiful things that came out of them. But if we can remember that when we're faced with things, just like this beautiful song, if we can remember that when we're faced with something, even as it's going on, it just makes things a lot more bearable. And a lot of good things happen from that. So recently, I just have been struck a lot of different times doing nothing important, but for example, riding my bike home from Zumba one day. There was a light, and it's this beautiful fall weather we're having, so I stopped at a light just kind of waiting, and I was just I don't know, kind of went into this place of rapture over how beautiful this moment was. I was downtown in Lawrence, Kansas. There was nothing in particular happening. It was just suddenly this awareness that this moment was so amazing and that this moment would never come again, which made it even more amazing and really, really sacred. And it reminded me of the first Yoga Sutra. This is Atta Yoga Nushasanam. And that first word, Atta, is translated as now. But implied in that word is an idea of sanctity, because every single moment is precious. And in every single moment, we get to do what Cheryl Strayed was saying there. We get to take a step towards making this world a better place, making our life better, and making it better for other people as well. And so when there are these tragedies like happened this past weekend in Paris, and are happening really all over the world, but Paris was in the news a lot. When those things happen, they are horrific, and our grief is tremendous. Again, as Cheryl Strayed said, but it's an opportunity for us to reach out and to do something in our own circle, whatever it is, within us or around us, to remember how important it is to reach out to others and to have love in our hearts, because that is what is going to overcome all of this. And unfortunately, sometimes we need a little bit of grief to get to that place, because it's so easy for us to go into this other place of being unsatisfied or whatever else is going on. So another moment I had, I rose quite early. Sometimes I can't sleep, and so I've learned that to kind of recognize when I'm going to be able to go back to sleep or not. And I've trained myself to just get up sometimes if I realize I'm going to be just lying in bed awake, stewing for 2 hours or whatever it is because I can't go back to sleep. To just get up and go outside and do my little morning thing that I do. I do some yoga outside, and then I come inside and meditate and often take a shower and go back to bed. And I guess in times gone by, that was something that was pretty routine for certain farmers in certain places, and it was called second sleep. So they'd get up in these wee hours of the morning and do some work and then go back to bed and finish their night's sleep. And I have found that that is the most delicious sleep I get ever. I have these amazing dreams. So I would recommend it to anybody who is able to do that. But it was one of those mornings quite early, and that same thing happened, where it was just like there's something very magical about that hour anyway, of sunrise and pre-dawn. And again, I just had that moment of like, oh my gosh, life is so amazing, and this moment is so incredibly beautiful. So those things are there. We can access them all the time. I feel it sometimes when I'm playing, and I realize just in every single note that grace exists, or in breathing during yoga, that every single breath, grace exists. But somehow we get separated from that understanding, even though it's always there. So today I kind of wanted to talk about gratitude as a tool for taking us into that place of grace. So initially, I called this an instant transformation, living in gratitude at instant transformation, because we can be transported when we apply that tool in that moment. But then I thought, as I worked on the talk more, I thought a recipe for transformation is better, because it's something we need to practice. There's steps that we take, and it's something we practice over and over again, and the more we practice it, the better we get at it. So during these times, I've just come to see gratitude as a kind of doorway into grace. So I wanted to share a story, a Taoist parable. I'm sure some of you have heard this before, about the farmer who lost one of his best stallions. You heard this story? It's a great, great story. So he lost one of his best stallions, and the neighbor came over and was like, oh, I'm so sorry about your loss. That's so terrible. And the farmer said, who knows what is good and what is bad? And the next day, the stallion came back with 3 wild mares. And the neighbor came over and said, oh my gosh, that's so fabulous, so amazing. And the farmer said, who knows what is good and what is bad? The next day, his son was out breaking one of the wild mares and fell and broke his arm and his leg. The neighbor came over, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about your son. The farmer said, who knows what is good and what is bad? The next day, the army came by to conscript all the young men, and they passed him over because he was viewed as an invalid, the son, even though it was temporary. This time, the neighbor came over and said, who knows what is good and what is bad? So this is a very, very good reminder for us. We tend to get in these, just all caught up in something that's happening. As soon as it happens, that everything is just going to be all messed up. And this happened to me the other day. I was downtown distributing posters for my concert. And I'd been to quite a few stores already, maybe halfway through or something. And I realized, where are my keys to my car? I checked my pockets really quickly. They weren't there. I was like, well, okay. So I went to a few more stores. And I thought, I should really look in my purse to see, because usually they're there, right? I just don't see them right off the bat. I emptied everything out. My keys were not there. So I knew that many times in this situation I would panic. And you know how it is now. You lose your car keys, people can just go around and find your car, right? So in the past, I would have gone to this place of, oh my gosh, my car's going to be stolen, somebody will have broken in, I'll never find my keys, et cetera, et cetera. But instead, I was like, well, there's nothing really I can do about it in this moment. I'm going to finish distributing my posters. When I get back, hopefully my car will be there, and then I'll try to figure out where my keys are. So I got back. My car is there. I was very grateful my car was there. And then I looked inside. I didn't see the keys anywhere. And I remembered actually locking the car, with the little fob, after I left my car. So I was like, okay, that means I left my keys somewhere. It's now the stores are closing, and I don't know where I left them, if I left them sitting on the hood of my car or at the parking meter or in a store. But I was like, well, I'll just start retracing my steps and see what I find. The first store was closing, but I knocked on the door, and they were like, nope, not here. So I went to the second place, and there were my keys sitting exactly where I had put them. It was a quiet little acupuncture center, so there wasn't a lot of traffic. And also a brand new pair of gloves that I didn't even realize I had lost were there with my keys. So I was like, okay, great. Okay, good. And before I'd made this plan, it's like, if I don't find them, I'll call someone to come and get me and take me home and get my other set, and I'll deal with the rest later. But I felt grateful, not only that my car was there and that I found my keys, but also that I didn't go into some kind of panic, because I didn't really know the result. And the same thing had happened earlier, actually, in the week. Well, actually, it's been going on for a couple of months, having to do with finances, which I'm going to get to in a little bit. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, so in that moment, anyway, I just felt, I've been thinking a lot about gratitude, this concert coming up, this talk, and in that moment, I thought, oh gosh, I'm just, I came home, everything looked so cozy, and I just felt like I was wrapped in gratitude. And then I thought, oh, I'm wrapped in gratitude, but I'm also wrapped, R-A-P-T, wrapped in gratitude. It's taking me to this other place, this place of rapture. And that doorway is just there all the time. So how can we train ourselves to be in this attitude of gratitude more often? So sometimes it's simply about waiting, just like that farmer, or kind of like I did when I lost my keys, just waiting to see what's going to happen next. So accepting the situation and having a little bit of patience instead of jumping ahead into some, fearful future that we actually are just inventing in our minds. But we can also start to train ourselves to actually begin to seek the good within whatever situation there is. So in that situation with my keys, for example, the good was that store where I left my keys was still open. I had a car. That was a nice thing, that I actually had a car and a nice new set of gloves that I didn't lose. So, that particular example isn't really about suffering. I wasn't really suffering that much. But suffering plays an important role, and we tend in this culture to just want to run away from it, like it should be annihilated. But in most traditions, it's recognized that suffering is, and including the Christian tradition, that suffering is really essential to our growth, that it causes us to move into a higher place, that we're called from a deeper place to work through whatever it is that's going on. And often, too, it just helps us really strip away all the stuff that's not necessary, to recognize what's really important. So Wayne Teasdale, are you guys familiar with this author? A wonderful writer. It's called A Monk in the World. So a very, very spiritual person who was actually a monk for quite some time. And he has something that he calls tough grace. So he says, it operates through illness, injustice, psychological problems, and misunderstandings to bring us to a single-minded attention of what is important for our ultimate development. Tough grace is never about punishment. God doesn't punish us with suffering, nor is it a means of divine coercion. Suffering provides us with lessons that dispose us more readily to divine union and helps us to consider those things we often take for granted. Tough grace puts these things in the front of our face. Tough grace brings about a radical simplification of our lives by first purifying our hidden motives with love and compassion. It highlights just what we need for the spiritual journey and counsels us to leave the rest behind. In this way, tough grace is itself a gift, though it may be the kind of gift we are too anxious to receive. Until we witness its profound transformative effects on us, then we understand. So I just thought he put that really beautifully. So I've had these situations. One of them, they're both kind of, very mundane, kind of just daily things. One of them has to do with sugar, and the other one has to do with finances. So those of you who follow me on Facebook may have seen the 30 days of sugar that I did, a 30-day no sugar challenge. So I really love chocolate, and I like sugar. But I also know it's really not good for me. The truth is, it's not good for any of us. That's the bottom line. But in my case in particular, as a cancer survivor, and for other reasons, it's really not good for me to eat sugar. And so I decided, and I was, kind of ODing. I'd moved into this place where, for me, when I get into those kind of things, it's better to just cut it off. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do this thing. And so I made a commitment, and it makes it much easier when you have a commitment. So I made this commitment, and I did it. And so many amazing things happened. I mean, nothing that was over, hit me over the head, but my skin cleared up, I slept better, my mood was better, my energy was better, my joints felt better, my my bowels were better, a bunch of different things happened. And I also, I've never been much of a drinker, but because it was no sugar, I also had no alcohol. And especially since chemo, alcohol really doesn't sit well with me. But I get this idea in my head, oh, this sounds like a good idea, I'll just have a beer. That sounds nice, I'm gonna watch the game, and have a beer. And then I will, and then my stomach is all off, and I feel, soggy for 24 hours. So it also pushed me to just let go of alcohol, which I am eating sugar again, but I haven't had anything to drink since then. So, but it left me, the best thing of all, it left me feeling so clean, super clean inside. So if you can imagine a brand new engine in a car, no grease anywhere, everything's running so smoothly, that's exactly how I felt, but it was my body. So it was such an amazing gift to my body. And then I started thinking, wow, what a gift that my body doesn't like sugar or alcohol. It's actually, my body is requiring me to have a diet that is more amenable to spiritual transformation. So often in more rigorous spiritual training, there's a lot of things like certain sleep patterns, meditation practices, certain diets that are healthier and cleaner. So I thought, well, wow, that's cool. As I'm getting older, we tend to think of that as a bummer. Oh, my body can't handle this anymore. My body can't handle that. It's actually doing me a great service, helping me to move further forward. So that's an example of the kind of gratitude and grace that can come out of these things that seem like hardships. So the other one, and a much bigger one for me, had to do with finances, which is one of my big challenges, right? So I've been doing some work with a lady called Christine Kane who talks about camp scarcity and camp abundance. And I had no idea how deeply ingrained I was in camp scarcity, how much I lived there, how much my whole family lives there. And she made us list these adjectives, like what adjectives go along with camp scarcity and what adjectives go along with camp abundance. And in camp scarcity, it's things like lack, fear, anguish, jealousy, all this stuff that's not very pleasant. And in camp abundance is all these things like peace and harmony and generosity and fulfillment and delight and joy. And I'm like, whoa, I want to be over there. That sounds way better. So it really just helped me shine a light on something I just couldn't see very clearly because I was so entrenched on this other side. Always fearful about what was going to happen next and not having enough. And granted, in the last, starting in 2009, a lot of things happened to me that caused some pretty severe financial hardship. I lost a job, I had cancer, I wasn't eligible for any insurance that was affordable, so I had to pay a lot of money for insurance, and I wasn't really able to work for most of a year. So, I had reason to have some financial anxiety. But in my mind, I was destitute. When in fact, in the bank, I still had some money. I didn't ever have to touch my retirement fund. I had friends all around me who were helping me out, offering me food, offering me this. Somebody had a benefit concert for me that raised a lot of money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I was far from being destitute. But in my mind, that's what I was. So even in that really, really difficult time, it just wasn't true. It was just a story I was telling myself. And so I've really tried to practice moving over into a different space and recognizing that actually there's endless abundance around us and sticking with my path as an artist, even though, would have been easier in many, many ways to just go get a regular job with health insurance coverage, for example. And again, in this book that I'm listening to by Cheryl Strayed, she was talking about artists. Somebody wrote in who was an author and hadn't gotten his six-figure publishing deal and was lamenting it. And she said to him, first of all, it seems like you're coming from a place of entitlement and you're just in anguish because you think at 31 you should have a six-figure publishing deal, and that may not be very realistic. But she talked about artists and how many artists give up because it's difficult to live as an artist, and our society doesn't really support financially artists. But those who continue, it's because they have found a way to believe in abundance. I thought that was really, really interesting. So that's how they have made it. It isn't that they maybe have more money than they would have before, but they have chosen to see the world in a different way. So I've really been working hard on that. And miraculously, financially, things have been getting a lot better, or synchronistically, I should probably say. Things have been getting better. And partly the attitude adjustment, but also, things are just working out a little bit better for me. So for the first time in a long time, the past I don't know, month or two, I've been feeling like I can breathe a little bit financially. I can start taking care of getting new guttering on my house and some automobile repairs that need to happen, et cetera, et cetera. So I was just, relaxing into that and like, okay, this is great. I'm going to just be able to coast for a while. And of course, at that time, the universe decided to send me some challenges to help me continue working on being in Camp Abundance. So the first thing that was happened is I got a nice letter from my health insurance company saying your premiums are going up 30%, which actually the way they put it in their letter meant that my actual premium would be going up like 350%, from $50 a month to $189, because I'm receiving all of that increase, as opposed to I'm eligible for a subsidy through the Affordable Care Act. So, they were calculating that subsidy remaining the same. Whether it is or not, I don't know yet. I haven't gotten on the site to find out. But I saw my little habit. My first thing was to panic. Oh my God, I'm going to be destitute again, right? Because I'm going to have to pay all this money for health insurance. And then I was like, whoa. I mean, really within an instant. This is just going through my head. It's like, okay, first of all, that's what the Blue Cross letter says, but you don't have all the facts. You haven't gotten on to see what's going to happen with subsidies. Are they going up or not? There's other possible selections I could make. There's a lot of things I don't know, and there's no need for me to panic now. I just need to wait until I can have find all the information out, and then we'll see. And even if I have to pay that $189 a month, it will be fine. I can do that. I was paying like $600 a month when I was not working as much, so it will be fine. Right after that, literally like almost the next day, I got a quote on some repairs for my car, and they said that'll be $2,000. I was thinking more like, maybe 300? So I was like, whoa, again, that whole little cycle happened again, but then I was like, okay, wait. I don't have to panic. I don't know if all of those repairs are actually necessary. I don't know if I have to do them all right now. Let me just see. I can call around, get some other quotes. Again, something else came up about my phone bill and having to look for a new company, and that's probably going to be a little more expensive. And then I got a bill from a laboratory that had done some genetic testing in August of 2014, saying that it had finally gone through all of the hoops back and forth with my insurance company, and that they were denying $2,700 worth of the cost, $6,600 to get this genetic testing. I'm like, whoa. So again, same little cycle. Okay, so all of those things happened really literally within a week of me feeling like, I can, fix my house, I can do this, I can do that. But I really, I could kind of stand back and watch it with humor and say, okay, all right, I get to practice. And I like to pat myself up on my back a little bit because I did practice during all of those things. I didn't like freak out. I didn't like, jump over and just go to sleep in camp scarcity. I was just, put a toe in there and took it back out again. And each of these things has actually resolved themselves pretty well. The health insurance thing, I don't know the actual answer, but I'm pretty sure that that's going to work out well. The car repairs ended up also working out. I think I ended up paying about $1,200, but another issue appeared in the meantime. So that was in addition to the other things, and it still wasn't as much as they said. And in fact, I had that money sitting in my bank account, and not in my savings, but in my actual checking account, which I was like, whoa, that's cool. A lot of people don't have $1,200 there that they can just whip out and say, hey, right? So I felt extremely fortunate for that. And the genetic testing took one call, and they said, oh no, that's fine. They're just writing that part off. They got their payment from the insurance company, and that's all they want. So, really things turned out very beautifully in all of those. So this new approach, there were a lot of gifts within that. The first one was that I had the awareness to observe my reactions, rather than just having a knee-jerk reaction and running out and doing whatever. I just could stand back and watch my reactions and then wait and see what was, do my research and then see what was going to happen and recognize that I actually do have what's needed, and I will have what's needed to take care of whatever comes. There's always choices, and there's, going to be a way for it to all work out. It was just a false story that I'm lacking and don't have what I need, because I do. And, I had the wherewithal to gather the information that I needed. And then I could see that these were just opportunities for me to practice, that they were all little gifts. And I found myself doing this thing during the whole car situation, where I'd be like, oh, the good news is I have a car. That's a luxury that we tend to take for granted. And I have a pretty nice car. I really love my car. So then I'd be, oh, the bad news is it needs repair. But the good news is I have the dollars to do it. The bad news is I won't be able to do something else with those dollars. And then I got this new warning signal on my car, which said I shouldn't drive it at all. I should just pull it over. I'd actually made an appointment for the other repairs for a Monday, and on Sunday I got in my car to go to a concert that I was playing in, and it said, pull over now. Stop safely now. So I go and read my little car manual, and it says, well, you can try restarting it, which I did. Same signal came on. Then it said, well, you probably don't want to drive it because you might have a fuel leak and it might catch fire. So I was like, okay, well, that's a bummer, okay. And now there's going to be more repairs on my car. The good news, I'd already made an appointment for the next morning, right? The bad news, I can't drive my car, so how do I get it to the place? The good news is I have AAA with 100 miles of free towing service. So I called AAA, they pick it up and take it in. And I had a friend who took me to the concert. So, you know, but it was just so entertaining watching this good news, bad news, which we can all do all the time. It's like its own little practice. You find yourself thinking about some bad news, think about the good news, and it'll just go back and forth. So I could go on telling lots of other stories about this, but we're already over time, so I'm gonna close it off there. I do want to, for meditation, I'm gonna use this song called Hard Times Come Again No More that's on my new CD, and I rewrote the lyrics for the second verse. The first verse talks about how, you know, let us pause in life's pleasures and count its many tears while we all sup sorrow with the poor. So it's this stepping into compassion and recognizing that there is suffering. It reminds me of the Four Noble Truths, you know, there is suffering, and developing compassion. But then in the second verse, I rewrote the words. So instead of saying hard times come again no more, which is more like, please, you know, stop being at my door, instead move into this place of hard times shall come again no more, because I see the grace within this. So I'm going to share that song as part of our meditation. In fact, that song will pretty much be the meditation. And at the end of the song, I'll just stop and we'll sit in silence a little bit. But other than that, the song is what will guide you in the meditation. So it's a kind of way that I practice this beautiful thing of having this attitude of gratitude that can be a recipe for transformation. Thanks.